if that was the only sampling methodology I had to add, I could click on the Continue to Create AQS Data Files form, and that would allow me to start work on generating my AQS ready file with the toolbox. But I still have PM 2.5 and net methodologies to add. So now I'll demonstrate the next one. So I need to go back into the Add AQS Sampler Method form. And this time I am going to use the Manually Add and Verify Monitor Protocol Data button. And I'm going to enter my monitor protocol data for my PM 2.5 sampler and my MET samplers. So I will do that. And that brings up this new form. We're going to be making selections in these drop-down boxes to tell the toolbox what our sampling methodologies for the PM 2.5 sampler is and for our meteorological sampler. So I'm going to start with adding PM 2.5. So the way you want to do this is start at the top of the form, and in the first section that's enclosed by the red frame, you want to click on the drop-down arrow of the tribe ID selection box. So here you want to select your tribe, and this brings up an alphabetized list of tribes available for selection, and here, this is their AQS tribal code. So I am going to be using the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, that's tribal code 101, because that's where my imaginary sites are located, and the data I imported into the toolbox from the samplers is not actual data collected on the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. So I'm going to find my tribe, and there we go, and click on that to select it. And the next thing I want to do is select the AQS site ID. So I am going to click that, and 0002 is my AQS site ID where my PM 2.5 monitor is located. So then I go to this next area of the form that's enclosed by the red frame, and I need to select the pollutant. So I click on the drop-down, and I select PM 25 continuous. Remember that if you're monitoring continuous data, it's continuous. Don't select filter, because that's for your filter-based data. We are monitoring with the dam, so we're going to select PM25 continuous. Oh, I forgot something. Well, I need to go back. And look, this is not checked off, so I forgot to do this. So I forgot to do this in the red frame, and I can tell I forgot to do it because the radio button is not checked off, so I need to go back and do that. So that button says, View Existing Monitor Protocol Records for this site. And what that does is that when I'm entering this, I don't want to duplicate monitor protocol data that I've already entered. So I want to check this to make sure I'm not entering duplicate data. So let's just take a look at that. And there's nothing there. And the reason is because I haven't entered any monitor protocol data for this site. Remember, I imported monitor protocol data, but that was my other site where my ozone monitor is located. So I don't need to do anything, and I don't need to worry about duplicating data here. So I can close that. And now that is checked off, so I know I completed that step. I am glad that was there, otherwise I would have forgotten to complete that step. Now I will go to this POC selection, and I am not sure what that means. So I am going to open up the SOP. So I'm going to click here for the help file, and I'm going to find something about the POC. So this automatically opens the section of the help file that's on manually adding monitor protocol data. So I'm going to see what I can find out about the POC. So it says choose the POC, and if this is the first time you have entered monitor protocol data for a site, you will need to type in the POC instead of choosing it for the drop-down box. And it also tells me that in most cases this value will be 1. However, if the site has co-located monitors, the POC for the co-located monitor is usually 2. And the exception is if the pollutant is PM 2.5 continuous, then EPA prefers I use a POC 3 for the primary sample and POC 4 for the co-located sampler. So I currently don't have a co-located PM 2.5 sampler at my site. However, in the future, I might want to add that. So I'm going to save myself the hassle of having to change my POC at a later date, and I'm going to enter a POC of 3 for my PM 2.5 sampler. So I'll go back into the toolbox, and remember, if I click on the drop-down, there's nothing there since this is the first time I've entered monitor protocol data for this sampler. So I'm going to type in a 3 for my POC. So the next item, this button displays data that you have imported into the toolbox for the site and the pollutant. And one of the most important reasons you want to do this is to confirm your units, because you're going to have to select what units you're going to use for your data, and you want to make sure they match. So if you can't remember what your units are, or there's any uncertainty with that, make sure you click on this button. So let's take a look at the existing data collected for this site and pollutant. And I just get this query, and I confirm that the units are in micrograms per cubic meter. So if I scroll down, I just want to make sure that the units are consistent, and they are. So now I can write that in my database logbook that my units are micrograms per meters cubed, and make sure I make the correct selection when I am entering my monitor protocol data into the toolbox. So I can close this query by clicking on the lower F, and now I can go to the next section of this form that's enclosed by the red frame. This is where you select most of the elements of the sampling methodology. So the first selection box here says, is data collected with a federal reference or equivalent method? So my BAM does have a FEM reference and can be considered an FEM if operated under the EPA requirements specific to the FEM. However, I don't meet those requirements since I do not have a co-located sampler. So I'm going to select no from the drop-down list because my BAM is not being operated under the FEM requirements. So I select no. If at some point you get a co-located sampler and it changes to a FEM or FRM, you'd have to add a new monitor protocol data and start using that one instead, and then your parameter code would change and stuff like that. So if that happens, let us know and we can help you out with that. So the next thing I need to do is select the parameter. So I click on the drop-down, and for PM 2.5, I've got 3 options. So according to AQS documentation, the parameter code for continuous PM 2.5 data that's not collected under a FRM or FEM is 88501. So I'm going to select that. But also, you should probably talk to your regional AQS contact, and he or she might have some guidance for you on what parameter you're supposed to select. Keep that in mind with the selection of your parameter code, as PM 2.5 continuous is the hardest one. For the other ones like ozone, there's only one parameter, but PM 2.5 continuous is a bit of a challenge. So make sure you're reaching out to your AQS regional contact or us at ITEP, and we can help you with that. So I'm going to select 88501, and now I'm at my method code. So I'm going to select a drop-down box here, and that comes up with this very large selection box. And there's a lot of information in this selection box, and it's going to help you select the correct method code. So these method codes correspond to your sampler. So you'll see I've got a lot of TOMs listed here, and then if I continue to scroll down, you can see I'm starting to get my BAMs, etc., etc. And another thing that's very helpful, if I had selected that my data is collected with an FRM or FEM, the equivalent method description and the reference method ID would be filled in. So the method code that I'm going to use is a BAM. Let me find it here. It's a BAM, net1 BAM with a SCC. So I'm going to select that because I know that that is the method for my particular sampler. Now remember the reported units, I checked that, and they were in micrograms per meters cubed. So I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow there. And this is really, really important. Make sure you select the correct units, because otherwise your data are going to get submitted to AQS in the wrong units, and you definitely don't want that because that makes the data pretty much meaningless. So make sure you select the correct units here. So I'm looking for micrograms per cubic meter, and I collect my data at local conditions rather than standard based on the EPA specification. So I need to select 105, which is micrograms per meters cubed at local conditions. So I select that, and then I go into the sample duration field, and my data are hourly, so I select hour. So I've selected everything in these drop-down lists, but I haven't added them to the toolbox yet. So I need to click on this Add Monitor Protocol Record button in order to get these data into the toolbox. If I don't click on that, they don't go into the toolbox. So make sure you click on the Add Monitor Protocol Record button. And I get a message box about running in a pen query, so I'm going to click yes because I want to add the data to that table. So I'll click yes, and it says I'm about to append 1 row, and every time you do this, every time you add a new AQS sampling methodology, it's going to append 1 row. So I click yes again, and there's one other thing I want to do. For PM 2.5 data, I also want to submit my flow rate checks to AQS. I remember that my flow rate checks are in different units. They're in liters per minute, and my monitoring data are in micrograms per meters cubed. So I need to add another sampling methodology for my flow rates. So I need to change this to liters per minute and then add that. So 118 liters per minute add local conditions, I will select that, and then I will add that monitor protocol data to the toolbox. So I will click on that, and I'm going to run an append query that will modify data. So yes, I want to add that to the toolbox, and I'm going to append one row. Just like I said, every time you add a new monitor protocol record to the toolbox, you'll be adding one row. Say yes,